Hello, this is Ed Rigsbee with another edition of Raw and Unedited for Association Executives. This is where we give you tips, tactics, innovation, skills, and all the good stuff to make you a far better association leader. So, have you ever been sitting there in your office wondering, am I part of the solution? Or, oh gosh, am I part of the problem? Well, if you've ever wondered that, today we're lucky because we have Dr. Rick Goodman, who is the author of the newly released book, just today, The Solutions-Oriented Leader. And he's going to talk to you about all the cool stuff in his book and how you can be a solutions-oriented leader. So, Rick, thanks for being here. And let's start off. You have on the title page of your book, you're giving away, before people even read your book, a free leadership assessment. So how's that going to help an association leader to better lead their staff and their volunteers?
Well, I find that a lot of times people lack what we call self-awareness. And we may think that we're good at certain things or that we really know about it, but it's kind of like when you were growing up, you never thought that you were going to be out of touch, and all of a sudden as you got older and you had children, all of a sudden you started seeing that they were doing things that you weren't doing, and you felt like you were a little bit out of touch. So having this assessment puts you back in touch with, one, what you're really good at, and some of the skills that you may need to work on, and others that you knew but you kind of just let slip. So it's a great way to get focused on what you need to do in order to become a solutions-oriented leader.
Gotcha. So, is this assessment, is this going to take a long time? Is it a long assessment, short assessment? Am I going to spend all week on it or I'm busy. Do I have time to do it?
The assessment may take you a minute to maybe a minute and a half if you're really thinking hard on it.
So it's
it's a very simple assessment in there to evaluate yourself, and I think there's 20 questions,
okay.
So it's real easy, where it's got enough information to give you great feedback, but not too much to take up your time.
Got it. So, Rick, in chapter 2, you wrote about the power of positive thinking. Okay, so that brings in my mind visions of Norman Vincent Peale. And I'm wondering if the younger association executives watching this, if they're thinking, oh my gosh, isn't this 1990 psycho-babble? And, convince us that it's not. Help us understand why the power of positive thinking is real and it's important.
Well, I think the perfect example happened just yesterday in the Masters tournament with Tiger Woods. So many young people have heard about Tiger Woods and what a great golfer he was, but nobody got to see it because he hadn't won a major tournament in 11 years and hadn't won the Masters in 22 years. So if we're talking about millennials or the age group between 23 and 45, which is really my focused niche audience that's looking to become solutions-oriented leaders, they just got to see an example of someone who, through positive thinking, visualization, and persistence, after having a back surgery 2 years ago, came through and won the Masters versus many people that were much older than he was of his age group, and showed them how to do it. So it's by references. And I think that the more references that they see of athletes or people in entertainment or people who are in the business world who keep telling about the examples of positive thinking and having that vision and having that goal, it adds to the references. So I think that they're starting to see that it does have validity. And as you and I both know, it's had validity since the beginning of time.
So in positive thinking, tell me, what's that sports jersey behind you?
Well, the sports jerseys, that's Shaquille ONeal.
Can you change the camera? Change the camera view just a little bit?
Sure.
So we can see the whole thing? Okay.
Yeah, we got Shaquille O'Neal's jersey from there, and also from his days as a Laker.
Wow.
So I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of professional athletes, Super Bowl champions. I was one of the team physicians for the St. Louis Rams when they went from worst to first and won the Super Bowl. And I've worked with the Miami Heat and with the St. Louis Ambush professional indoor soccer team. And each and every one of those teams had a game plan and a vision. And they had goals, and they weren't going to win the championship without positive thinking. You know, the way you start your day determines that whole day.
So when you were working with the Rams, and as a matter of fact, I was pretty upset with you about the Rams being in St. Louis until they recently came back to California. So we're okay again. But when you were working with the Rams, I mean, how did positive thinking help people that were injured or had pain that you helped? How did that work for them?
Well, most of our injuries and a lot of the things that go through our mind and our brains really affect our bodies. If you see someone who's not feeling well and they've got a bad attitude, they're going to debilitate and get worse. And same with people who are positive that they're going to recover. You see so many times when athletes are injured and they say this is a game-ending injury or a career-ending injury, and they say no, it's not, just like a Tiger Woods. And 2 years later, they come back and win a championship against all odds. And that's the way you've got to focus. And like Stephen Covey always said in 7 Habits, begin with the end in mind. You know what you want your outcome to be and work your way backwards. You'll eventually hit that goal.
So, Rick, an association executive is kind of like a coach. And, you've worked with a lot of sports teams, so, you've worked with coaches. How does the association executive help their staff, their paid staff, and their volunteer leaders to have a positive attitude?
Well, I think the first thing comes with communication. We've got to communicate because a lot of the association people are volunteers. So we know that it takes a lot of their personal time up. So one is that communication, and the second is recognition. Everybody wants 3 things. They want love, appreciation, and respect, like the food they eat, the air they breathe, and the water they drink. And we've got to recognize the people who do a great job. And what I've been doing lately is 2 things. One is I will do handwritten notes. Why? Because nobody does it anymore. And that personal note, taking that pen to paper for even a minute or 2 minutes just to say, hey, I really appreciate you. Thanks so much, can make a huge difference in someone's day. And the second is video email. I love to use video email because nobody's doing it. And a lot of times I'll just I shot a video the other day and I'll take a little Post-it note and put the person's name on it, Roger, and a little smile. And, they'll open it up because they're wondering, what's this guy got to say? And sometimes it's the difference between someone responding and not. There's many times I've sent emails, left phone calls for people, and there's been no response. And I sent one video email, and right away they said, that's great, I'll get right back to you. So it comes to engagement.
What kind of a program, which program do you use for video email?
Well, I use a program called OneMob. And the reason why I like OneMob is because I can shoot that video and I can run it through my own system, whether it's Outlook, whether it's Gmail, so I can get to see exactly what happens with that mail. And the other cool part is I get to see when people open it up. So I can see if they're interested, how long they watched the video. I can see if they've shared it with other people. So I had sent a video email to the Miami Heat executives, and the next thing you knew, I saw that email traveling through all different states to a lot of the decision makers to show them the power of using video email. And in fact, many of the NBA teams, their sales teams, are using OneMob right now.
So if an association executive used something like that to send out messages to his or her board, they could see easily whether the board member opened it or not.
Absolutely. When one of the challenges we have, in fact, I'm going to be speaking for a major association that has different chapters in all 50 states. And one of the biggest challenges is that 50% of the people sitting on the board are uninvolved, don't want to be, or just there because for the name recognition, but they don't get involved. Mm-hmm. And they want to know, what can we do in order to kind of solve that situation? And what they told me was those people all being elected. And I kind of like to switch it around to the model that we use in the speakers associations, especially in the local chapters, where that president picks their board basically. Because they're going to pick people that want to be involved, and that kind of eliminates the problem of people just doing time, so to speak.
Sure. So let me ask you, in you talk about in what chapter is it? Chapter 6? No, chapter 5. Sorry, chapter 5. You talk about getting the right person in the right position. And I think we all know that there are people out there that are phenomenal in interviewing. And then once they come and sit at their desk, not so much. How do we get the right people? How do we hire the right people?
Well, the first thing I always do is I look at my best people and I'll say, who do you know who's just like you? And a lot of times they'll say, oh, I've got this great person, etc. Sometimes they'll say, you don't want any of my friends because they want to keep things solid around their place. But that's the first place that I look at because like attracts like. And in fact, in our company that I've been coaching down in Argentina, one of our divisions down there, almost 80% of the hirees came from another company. Because once they started seeing what a great culture we had created at this company, they all wanted to be part of that fun. And that's one of the biggest things that you can do to attract great people is create a great culture where people want to be involved. One of the companies that I focus on in my book is called Ultimate Software, and they're a huge HR software company. And their motto is people first. And because they put people first, their own people first, and then all their users as employees first, people just want to join in. In fact, they are also now the sponsors for the Miami Heat. They're on their logos. So this is a big company that started as a small company not more than 5 miles from my house. And now they're a huge, major company.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. Hey, we touched on communication a minute ago, which is your chapter 6, but you also talked about feedback. And, I'm kind of wondering, I'm thinking of association executives I've worked with, and some are great communicators and some receive feedback and some don't. In your experience of working with people that are association leaders, that lead staff, that lead volunteers, in their communication, where is the most common trip ups? What are some of the things that these people that are watching this, they can go, you can, this trip up, this trip up, this trip up, be careful of those, and they can go and check it off. Oh, you can. So, I'm just wondering, as far as the association execs walking in, they're probably thinking, okay, which trip ups? So give me some trip ups.
I think one of the biggest trip ups is having the same people that are there all the time and not engaging some of the newer members or some of the younger members that want to get involved. And what they see is let's say a good old boy, good old gal system, that the same people are always there, and then they start to get disinterested and not engaged. They may have great ideas. In fact, I was just in the Philippines, and I had asked this one person at a major conference why she wasn't involved in this one association. And she said she was for a year, but it was a group of people making all the decisions, not listening to any of the input from the other members. And therefore she felt uninvolved and not wanting to be with them. And she decided not to join again. And I think that's a real common occurrence in many associations, is that we always see people involved. And in fact, in the National Speakers Association, for many years, there was, a group of people who, so to speak, ran the whole show, and it became very exclusive. And each year you would show up to a meeting and they would talk about the same people, and it was like an inside joke. So anybody who was new didn't get the joke. And, that makes people not want to participate and keep their membership going. So I think one of the biggest things we can do is get new people involved right from the start, just like onboarding in a way where we're having an outreach. We're showing them the benefits of being a member and telling them all the time so that people really understand, and then giving them references of the different benefits of membership, the things that they're entitled to just by being there.
Gotcha. Yeah, as you're talking about marginalizing people and how associations can unintentionally marginalize people by having their cabal, because a lot of association leaders, they're most comfortable with their friends, and I mean, as I think back, I mean, back in 1999, that's why I started the cigar peg at the National Speakers Association, because so many people were marginalized. So very good point. Rick, you talk about emotional thinking in chapter 7. You talk about mastering emotional thinking. And, you know, I bet there's a number of association executives sitting there thinking, okay, you know, trying to deal with my staff, trying to deal with my volunteer leaders is like sipping from a fire hydrant. And, you know, and when I'm just, you know, juggling everything, I don't have time to master emotional thinking. You know, what do you have to say to those people?
Well, I think then you've got to jump up in what we call stage 3 of helicopter, because if you don't feel you have time to master your emotions, then what you're saying is you don't have time to master your communication. And, you know, we are emotional beings, and people buy from emotion. So one is, if we're wearing I always say your actions speak so loud, I can't hear what you're saying. So many times when we let our emotions get a hold of us, people are reading that all the time. And if the emotions are, I'm too busy right now, I've got, you know, so many things on my plate, just go do it. You're sending that message to everybody else without saying a word. So it's so vital that, one, we master our emotions, and two, that we really get up into what I call stage 3. And the example I always use is stage 1 is when we're kind of butting heads and we kind of think we know what to do. And stage 2 is when we're stagnated. And stage 3, we get up in what we call a helicopter. So, for instance, when you had the earthquakes in Haiti, the first thing everybody did was throw all kinds of, you know, food and supplies there to help the people. And then stage 2, all of it was sitting on the ground and people arguing the best way to help it. And then the president sent in the Marines, and they got up in helicopters, and they were able to look down on the situation, see where the supplies needed to be funneled, and they were able to make better decisions and get that food and supplies to what the people needed. And I think as an association of executive, we've got to put ourselves in the phase 3. We can't internalize and take these things personally. We've got to get up and see exactly what's going on. And some of the best ways to do that is getting assessments, getting feedback from our members. One of the things I was suggesting before I go speak at this big association is, why don't we find out, one, what's important to them, and also ask them what they think of having the president of the chapter being able to choose their own board. Would this make sense? Well, immediately we can get sales intelligence, and not only that, we can integrate this into the program. So I could utilize this survey right there, see what the people think, or what they think, and then give them the feedback on the results, so that maybe everybody then can come together and be focused in one direction, so that come August, when the main board meets, they can start to see if they want to make some changes that'll help the members, that the members truly want.
So Rick, I'm still a little fuzzy on, how do I master my emotional intelligence?
Well, I think the first thing you have to do is make the decision on your mastery of it. And it's also important to take an inventory of yourself. What are the things that kind of push your buttons? What are the things that you can't let go of? Because one of the things that we do is try to do everything. And that's what puts our emotions on the fritz right there. So we like to make a list of only I can do it, someone else can do it, or we can send this out the door as a contract situation. And what that does is, one, it puts you back in charge. When our emotions are in charge, when we're organized, we're great. And when we're not organized, that's when things start to skew and we start just putting out fires on a regular basis. So again, the first thing is to take a look and emotionally say, this is something only I can do, this is something one of my team members can do, and this is something we can send out the door. Because now you're starting to use your highest and best use also as an executive director, versus attempting to be everything to all people.
Got it. So in chapter 9, you wrote about having a correct culture in an organization. One of the things that I'm wondering about, and I bet you there are a number of other people wondering about this too, association executives do move around a bit. And when an association executive comes to an organization as a new leader. You know, how do they, when they come in and they look at this, they go, this culture is dysfunctional. This organization is a quagmire. What do they do? What are some of the steps that the association executive does to start turning this culture around to where they can have the culture of success rather than the culture of backstabbing and distrust and dysfunction?
Well, the first thing they have to do is nothing. And why they do nothing right away is because what I've seen, the biggest challenge for most leaders, they come in and they want to make immediate changes right away without getting the lay of the land, without knowing who the cliques are, who the people are that can block them. And one of the things that they can do best is work behind the scenes, because what they need is some of these people that are on their side. They need that intelligence that's been around for years and years, or what we call that tribal knowledge that leaves when they leave. That's the first thing that they have to do. Second is, once they do that, and they know who's on their team, so to speak, then they've got to lay out what their goals and objectives are, and they have to answer the question, why? Because everybody wants to know why, and the answer can't be because. And what they have to do is use some references of other successful changes and how it worked best. I remember being in a board meeting of an association, and similar to our associations that we see, the dues were due all different times. The dues were due whenever someone joined. So that was their year. And every month they were constantly striving to add new people into the association and keep up. And I said, well, why don't we just, prorate everybody so that when we collect dues, all dues are now in sync and due on the same time. Now we have a better grip on who's joining, how much they owe, and we're not constantly trying to figure this out. And a couple of the board members said, well, that's too much work. We can't do that. And it didn't make any sense to me at all. And we had to lay out the picture of how it would make sense and really how easy it would be. And it took some convincing, but once they got to see on paper, because some people are visual, how it would work, then they were able to come to our side. But right away, people's first instinct is no, because people don't like change.
Sure. So let's take a step a little bit further. So that's somebody coming in new, but now what about an association executive that's been there for 10 years, 20 years? And all of a sudden, one day they wake up and a realization comes to them, we've had a dimmer switch syndrome of change, and all of a sudden it's almost dark in our association, and we never realized that it's almost completely dark. How does an association executive, stop, stand up, and show a new vision, when they realize that their vision isn't working?
Well, I think, you got a 50-50 shot, at success. So if something's not working, do something different. And most people think, well, if we do it harder or we do it more, it's going to work. And I like to use the example, I don't like liver. If I ate it 1,000 times, I wouldn't suddenly like it, even though I'm doing it more or harder. So the first is that self-awareness. And second is just accepting responsibility that the plan didn't work. Once a leader accepts responsibility and communicates it, then people tend to get on board because they want to help move that association forward. If the leader is oblivious and keeps saying, well, we could work it, then people start to look at it for the reality and say, this person doesn't know what's going on. Why should I go down with the ship, so to speak? So the first part is that self-realization, and the second is communication. What we've been doing isn't working. And then really engaging the people who might not have been engaged, because you may have someone who has the $1 million idea. They've never been allowed to speak freely. Or maybe they're afraid that idea will get shot down because their ideas when they were younger got shot down. So we are all living with these personal references. So, first is step back, take that accountability, communicate it, and re-engage and look around and say, hey, I need some help. Because most people are great out there and they'll help you. But if you don't ask, hey, you're not going to GE take.
Got it. Hey, you stated in chapter 12, conflict is good. I think that from my observations, there's enough conflict, and most association executives are trying to minimize conflict, and help me understand why you believe conflict is good.
Well, I think conflict is good in a lot of areas, because if you've got conformity and everybody's agreeing, you really don't know if you're going in the right direction. And the reality is some people may be just afraid to speak up, especially if they've got people that have been in charge of this association forever and ever. I remember when I was first looking to join the board of my alma mater, Logan College, and most of the members of the board came over to me and say, listen, you're not going to be on the board. You're going to have to wait your turn because there's other people that have been more involved in all this. And you had to go up in front of everybody and give a little speech why you should be on the board. And then it was all the people there that were at the alumni event voted. All the alumni members voted right there on the spot. And I said, well, watch me get up there. And I gave them a speech, and I got elected right on the board right there. But it was about not wanting to engage that made me want to kind of get more involved. And it was about having that little bit of conflict because they just want to do things the same way. And the cool part about it is I just received a letter from Logan University that they are sending an email out to all their members and alumni, encouraging them to get my book for 48 hours, where we're offering it to them. So it's about that conflict, because if you're not, and I'm talking about confronting, not aggressive, but there's a good change and exchange of ideas. And when we're focused on solutions and we're thinking in solutions, not thinking in problems, and that's really the flip side. Most associations, most businesses, most people are focused on the problems. We got to put out the fires. Well, if you focus on the problems, you're going to see every problem out there. It's like when you're in rush to leave, you hit every red light. But when we start thinking in solutions and focusing on the solutions, we're going to go and move towards that direction. And that's what we want to be doing.
Got it. Hey, so you mentioned your book. We have the book. The book is just out. So tell us where we can get your book.
You can go get that book on Amazon, at Barnes & Noble. It's in the top 200 Barnes & Noble. You can get it on CEO Reads. So it's all in all your local bookstores out there, and it comes out April 16th. So we're real excited about it. We've got some great references on there. In fact, Brian Tracy said that it was a fast-paced book. It was going to help you be more productive, create a happy and healthy work environment. And that's really what we want to have happen. We want people to join what we call the solution revolution and start thinking in solutions, because if they're focused on how to fix things and solutions, the problems are going to start to minimize.
Got it. So, Rick, do you have any other resources that might help association executives do a better job?
Yeah, well, a couple of the programs are my Sales Mastery and the Art of Successful Negotiation, because we're always negotiating, whether we're negotiating with our other associations, our vendors, our spouse, significant other, or our kids. So it gives you a real good rock solid plan on how to negotiate step by step, and how to gather that intelligence information that's going to give you the edge in your negotiations.
Got it. So, I want to thank you, Rick, for being on this episode of the Raw and Unedited show. And I want to just tell everybody out there that's watching this, I've known Dr. Rick Goodman for a lot of years. And not only do I believe his book is wonderful, but if you want to bring him into your organization, whether you be an association, a society, I think that you'll find that he's going to add a huge amount of value to whatever meeting you might include him in. So, Dr. Rick, thank you so much. I appreciate you being here.
Thanks a lot, Ed. Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye.
Take care.